Hey everyone, and welcome to IGTV. I had this idea today while I was sitting in my food-stained bathrobe watching episodes of The Glow Up on Netflix. What about a more positive way to enrich my environment rather than feeling like a Siberian tiger trapped in an enclosure in the zoo rolling around a pumpkin full of hamburger meat? And I thought to myself, why don't we all, if we want to, take a skill, something that we're good at, and share it with the people of the world while we're quarantined in our homes? We'll call it the Social Distancing Skillshare. In fact, if you would like to join me in creating a video talking about a skill that you would like to share for the good of the world on this platform, use the hashtag Social Distancing Skillshare so that I can see your videos and enrich my environment instead of feeling trapped in my enclosure. Anyways, today it dawned on me that a lot of people would like to be employed, would like to get a better job, would like to do well and get some interviews under their belt, gain some experience, but don't really know how to write a good resume. Over the past many years, my friends, relatives, family, colleagues, etc. have all been sending me their resumes to critique. I have a lot of expertise in this area. I took a lot of programs and certifications at university for this, and I've also been in management for a lot of my professional life, which means I'm looking at applications, resumes, doing interviews, and going through the onboarding process with a lot of new and prospective employees. Therefore, I understand the vital importance of writing a resume. A resume is your first and sometimes only impression that a potential employer is going to have before making the decision to just throw your resume onto the pile of meh or calling you because they're excited and they want to set up an interview. So there are a lot of ways not to do this, and there are ways to do this. So let's talk about some really important things to include on your resume. Also, I have like a 7th grade education. Let me qualify that. I have like a 7th grade video editing education. So I have this whiteboard because graphics, subtitles, closed captioning, like I have a iPhone and a dream, so let's proceed. Okay, so step 1 on your resume, you want to include your name, if it's appropriate. You know, you think about your industry. Obviously, if you're applying to sort of an entry-level job or a second job type of situation, this isn't really necessary. But when you're going for those executive business development, those higher level jobs, you might want to include a kind of a professional epithet under your name. I'll just put this in parentheses here. Then you want to include your contact information, so your phone, your email, and your address. So name, in parentheses, your epithet, your phone, your email, and your address. Now, a few points about this. Epithet would be something like management professional, or electrical engineer, or freelance architect, something like that. so that they understand the sort of person that is applying for the job. It's a little bit, it can be, you might feel like, oh, I'm really padding my resume with that. But no, it really, it gives you it gives your employer sort of like oh, this is who we're dealing with. They've clearly read the job description and they feel like what they have is congruent to what we have, They're seeking to fill the void in our staff with this epithet. Of course, include the phone number. Even if you hate phone calls, most employers do want to contact you to set up an interview. They'll either try to set up an interview with you via email or phone. You have to leave both options open because you want to be contacted and you want to get through with this interview. The other thing, too, is make sure that this email is I hate to say it, but it's a grown-up email. It should be like your first dot, your last name, or first, last first at Yahoo, at Gmail. Because if I see yet another really great sounding resume, but this email is either like clearly the Hotmail address you've been using since you were 9, or it looks like a Neopets username, that's a red flag to me. And your address, of course, they do want to know, where you live, because they're probably concerned about your commute time if it is something where you are, in fact, physically commuting to that job. But anyways, my big takeaway is get a grown-up email address. Like, that's super important. You might go, wow, that's really superficial, but when you're making a first impression with a potential employer, that can be a massive red flag, and you just want to show off who you are, and your skills, rather than throwing in that personal flair right away, because it might startle someone. The next thing that you want to include in your resume is what we call at least in my school of resume writing, we want to include the professional goal. The point of the professional goal is to explain in 1 to 2 sentences what your experience is and how you plan to utilize it to further the goals of the company that you're interviewing for. For example, I like to use the base sentence structure of to use my blank to further blankety blank. Something like that. For example, to use my knowledge and skills with C++, JavaScript, and Python to further the user interface experience at whatever software firm incorporated. Or even, let's say you're applying as a line cook at Chili's. To use my knowledge of serve-safe restaurant protocol to enhance the customer service and food safety experience at this Chili's. It works for literally any profession. So what do you bring to the table, and how will that help the place that you are applying to further their professional goal? So what's your professional experience, and then how are you moving the organization forward? So now that we've figured out how to write our own name and introduce ourselves, let's get down into the real content of this, which is how to write your work experience. There are things to include and then things not to include. So things to include. Those would be, I would say, previous 5 years of work, or if, let's say, you've worked one job for the past 5 years, I would say the past 3 jobs or so. So either let's cover the last 5 years. Let's say that you change careers about once every year, year and a half. So 4 to 5 entries here. Or, just so it doesn't look like you've only ever worked one job, like let's say you had a gap. Let's say you were a stay-at-home mom and you're entering the workforce again. You know, maybe you've got one job after the gap, but maybe you want to do like 1 to 2 jobs before the gap, just so they kind of understand, oh, she is a stay-at-home parent that is now re-entering the workforce. Something like that. Things I would not include on this resume would be jobs worked under 30 days, and then any MLMs. I'm just gonna say it. Don't do that. Jobs worked under 30 days, MLMs, and volunteer work. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's break these down point by point here. So, we already talked about this, but jobs worked under 30 days. In many states, in many countries, a job you worked under 30 days isn't considered an official hire. For many employers, at this point, you're not eligible for a lot of company benefits. Like, you didn't even make it to the cutoff to start getting, you know, the 401k plan or the discount or whatever, any benefits of that sort. MLMs, these look horrible on a job description because you were self-employed, but really you were, let's be honest, the bottom block in a pyramid scheme. You were selling a product, you were harassing people on social media, and it's a very predatory business model, and it is not something that an employer is going to find impressive at all. You have very few professional references and professional contacts. They're not just going to call you, Boss Babe's CEO, and be like, oh, did she do a good job selling lipstick that won't come off until you die? Well, yeah, you can lie. You can pad your own resume. You're the CEO of your own little empire. Literally, just don't include it. Also, volunteer work, unless it is your absolute first job, like let's say that you are in high school trying to find some after-school employment, sure, write about volunteer work if it is relevant to the job that you are applying for, because you have nothing else to really speak to in terms of work experience. Getting into what you are going to put under your job title. You're going to put job, title, ending, title starting, dates, supervisor, and then duties. Okay, so let's break this down part by part. Of course, we want to have the name of the company right here. We want to have the title that you finished with right here. And if it's different than the title you ended with, the title you started with. You always want to have that title you ended with, because I'm assuming a better title than what you started with. So let's say you went from like hourly sales consultant to manager. So we want to have manager up here because it's a lot more impressive than hourly sales consultant right here. that is really going to give you a leg up, and it's going to show them, oh wow, okay, not only was she a supervisor, she was promoted from within, which is really a strong thing that's going to make your application stand out. You want to have the dates that you worked, pretty standard there. Supervisor. Let's say the supervisor that you had isn't going to give you a good reference. I would say pick maybe their supervisor if they're going to have a more positive reference for you, because they're definitely going to call these people and kind of do some fact checking. It's also probably best to go with someone a little higher up in the company to speak to about your job performance. If you're, the person you reported directly to is someone you had good rapport with and will give you a positive recommendation, I'd probably keep it. If it's a business that is no longer in business, explain that below duties. Like, for example, a restaurant that I worked in college went out of business suddenly under some pretty crazy circumstances. So I just wrote, I don't have a current phone number for my supervisor, Pam. Nobody knows where she is right now. Probably in the middle of the woods somewhere. So they understand, so they're not calling that phone number and asking for Pam and it's disconnected. Just, transparency here. The other thing is the job duties that you have. These are going to be things that are relevant to the job description. So read that job description really carefully. It says they want someone that is detail-oriented. They want someone who understands Microsoft Office. They want someone who is patient and good with kids. So what are things that you did in that previous job that would show that you have a good understanding of Microsoft Office, work well with children, and are patient and detail-oriented? And of course, explain what your day-to-day duties were as well. For the rest of your resume, you're going to have your education, certificates, and references. So education. Do not list elementary or middle school. That's completely irrelevant, however you slice it, to any job application. You can absolutely list your high school and list your university, list your program, list the degree you have, and specify whether you've graduated or whether you're still working towards that degree. The other super important thing about this is grades. I would say unless it is higher than like a 3.0 grade point average, don't list your GPA. If you scraped along and got like one of those C's get degrees, probably don't list the GPA. Just say, this is the name of the college I went to, this is the program I studied, this is the year that I graduated, this is the degree that I have. If you were like cum laude, summa cum laude, magna cum laude, of course, add that. If it's relevant, any kind of like honor societies you were in, if you were in National Honor Society, anything like that, go ahead and add it. So let's say that you are bilingual. That's a pretty universal, sought-after skill that any employer is going to look at. You can list any languages you speak well. If you can count to 10 in Spanish, do not tell them that you speak Spanish, because then they will be like, well, on your resume, it says that you speak Spanish. We wanted you to be our bilingual customer service associate, and you speak English. You don't want to end up in that kind of situation. So anything that's relevant to what you're doing and what you're applying for, go ahead and add it here. Sure, you might be a certified rock climbing instructor, but is that useful if you're going to be applying to be a medical records archivist? Unlikely, so don't include it. but any relevant certifications or other skills that you have not encompassed by your education you can put here. Also, if you do relevant volunteer work, like I worked for Engineers Without Borders to bring clean water to blank area where I worked for 4 months here. An internship, for example. I dug up dinosaur bones on the Great Plains. I learned how to curate them in a museum, and I am very good at gluing things together. Right there. Cool. Awesome. References. These can be anybody, but think about the industry that you're applying for. Obviously, don't put a family member down. Don't put a personal friend down. These could be, for example, a professor or teacher in school that you had a really good rapport with. These could be a supervisor that you had a great rapport with, someone who thinks the absolute world of you. I would just stay away from people who are like too personal and too familiar, where it's gonna seem like kind of nepotism. Like, oh, of course, my nephew. He worked my barbecue shop for many years. Please hire him. Don't do that. Put someone professional. Put someone who has probably some experience in the field that you're applying for. If you know someone who is a great bank manager and you are applying to be a teller at a bank, go ahead and put them. Anyways, use your discretion and don't use your family. This concludes my resume skills building hour. Maybe I'll continue this series. Maybe we'll talk about interview skills, sales skills, other professional development skills. But for right now, please enjoy my social distancing skills share, all about writing a resume. And if you want to add some content and help other people benefit from your specific knowledge on a thing that you do well, post an IGTV video or wherever you see this, whatever platform you find this on, and use the hashtag social distancing skillshare, and let's learn from each other. Anyways, have a lovely evening, stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time. Bye!